It's 4 o'clock in Radio Cairo. This is World of Info. We're coming live from Studio 3. My name is Dr. Amr Mabrouk. Dua Muhammad is at the control, and it's a beautiful afternoon in Cairo in Ramadan. Ladies and gentlemen, really today we have a very special and distinguished guest with us on air. She's joining us on the phone because simply we are now in the times of Corona. We're keeping some social distancing, but still our dear guest is also a very dear friend to Radio Cairo. This is her third time on Radio Cairo, and she is also a dear personal friend to us and to our family, and she is one of the people who really love and feel very much at home in Egypt. Her Excellency Ambassador Sibille de Cartier, Ambassador of Belgium in Egypt, is our distinguished guest in this afternoon, with years of service and experience representing her country in Rwanda, Kenya, Vienna, and working also in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Brussels, and here as the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Belgium in Egypt since 4 years. Definitely a great experience and a great times that she has passed, and really definitely a great improvement in the relation between Egypt and Belgium. We have a lot to talk about Belgium and about Egypt and about our bilateral friendly relations. Today with us is Ambassador Sibille de Cartier. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming on air in this afternoon.
Thank you very much for your invitation. It's a privilege to be with you again.
It's a great, really honor, and thank you very much for taking the time. I know you're very busy. The Corona time, some people think that the Corona time, the ambassadors or the diplomats are not busy and they are just sticking at home or staying at home doing nothing, while I believe you are very busy, right?
It has been a busy time for all of us, I think. Yes, indeed. We have been in crisis mode for a while. It's a bit quieter right now, but it has been challenging time to answer to all the Belgians and their needs in these unprecedented time.
Of course, yes. Actually, really, Ambassador, really we find that very hard times. I've never seen times like this. We have read about that. We have read about the Great Black Plague in 1347, and we've heard about pandemics and endemics happening. But to touch them and feel the fear and feel the hope, I think this is our first time in our lifetimes. What do you think about that? I mean, before going about the Belgium and about Egypt, I think I'll take part of asking you a bit sort of an emotional and experienced question coming from an experienced diplomat like you. These times are really unprecedented, as you have said.
Yes, it's definitely. I mean, I think maybe also. I mean, definitely for Belgians, we have the luck of living in times of peace for now more than 70 years. So we are not used to these big challenges that we are facing now. But I think the most important now is not to be driven by fear, and that would be my personal comment on the crisis. Of course, we have to be careful. We have to make sure that we keep our loved ones safe by our own behavior and being careful in the way we deal with things and keeping the social confinement and social distance that we are required to do now and it's not only for ourselves, it's for the ones we love. But also I think we cannot be driven by fear. We have also an opportunity maybe to take time with the ones we love that are living with us and to think about the ones that might need help in these crisis circumstances.
Of course, because I always believe that the first motto that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, in his inaugural speech, he said a very important statement. In the peak of the economic crisis of the 30s, he said in his inaugural speech, the only fear we've got to fear is fear itself.
Exactly.
So we are just going to talk about the role of Belgium. Belgium is really an important member in the EU, and its role in this EU is intensified in the Corona crisis. How do you see the future of the EU with this challenge? I mean, this is really an unprecedented challenge. The EU has never planned in their history, in their formation, that they would sometime or one time would close the borders in between the members of the states, would close the visa applications, would stop the travel or make a travel ban. I think this never crossed the forefathers of the EU when they started, or the imagination of having the European Union that with open borders, open economic cooperation, and open even military defense, all this just to be shaken, if we may use the expression, with this attack of this virus. Tell us about the EU and Belgium, and how do you see the future?
I mean, as we just mentioned, this crisis is really unprecedented, and it's not only affecting the EU. Of course, it's a global pandemic, and it has created, a global turmoil. So, of course, it has an impact on the EU that you're right, we could not have imagined before. But on the other hand, as all crises, it's an opportunity, and I think, of course, the first weeks, and it's always the same everywhere. The first weeks, everybody starts to react, and it's not very coordinated. And I think going through the crisis, we see, this multilateral response and international cooperation response is increasing. And I think the EU is the best place for this as a regional actor, but also with a global agenda in terms of supporting this multilateral solutions. And I think. That's the phase we are now. I think we saw it with this global conference last week, where the EU and Belgium were at the forefront, of course with multilateral institutions like the WHO and others, in terms of, okay, how are we going to work together to have the medicine we need, to have the vaccination we need now to be able to move forward. So I think now we are getting to the next stage, and as always, a crisis, of course, is a challenge first, but then it becomes an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Belgium as a country, of course, the population is not that huge, but still it has suffered a lot of, unfortunately, dear lives with the corona crisis. Tell us about this really heartbreaking times, and how the country is trying to pull itself together to reach the coast of security and safety.
The first thing, of course, is today I think we have to look at how this crisis developed, and I think that's the most important. And Belgium is a country that is not very big, but that is very, very dense. So densely populated, which explain also, we also have, as a lot of countries in Europe, a population that is aging. And so I think these were two very big challenges for us facing the crisis. But I think, with very heavy measures in the beginning that are now slowly starting to be softened, because the situation is evolving positively, we have been able to prevent what we wanted to prevent. Our health system has not been overburdened. And this is, I think it was a very, very big challenge. And this is why we had to take all these heavy measures in terms of confinement and limitation. And I think this is something we can be happy of. Of course, it's not only a successful story. I mean, this virus unfortunately kills a lot, and we have seen a lot of loved ones that have had their life lost, in particular in the elderly population.
Yes.
So of course, I mean, it's something that unfortunately we were not able to prevent. But okay, we have to move forward and continue to do what we can, and now to start slowly normalize our life, and meanwhile, as long as we don't have a vaccination available, do what we can to go towards a normalization, but with somehow new standards as well. And I think this is not something only for Belgium; it's something for the world.
Yes, you're starting to open up or ease up the restrictions next week or the week after, or what is the plan of the government, if I may ask?
The easing up started this week,
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be in 3 phases. But of course, each phase will be. The next phase will also depends on the evolution. So, but we started this week with a little bit more movement and preparation. and more social contact slowly. And yes, the different phases. I will not go into detail. I don't think it will be very, very useful because most of the listeners do not live in Belgium.
Yes.
But the goal is, to pave the way slowly for a normalization of the life. And I think the most important part is the social life, but also work life and economic life, which is impacting a lot of people. Again, and not only in Belgium, I know it's a very big topic also for Egypt as well, and keeping this balance between,
work and safety,
health measures and keeping, economic life alive it has been challenging for everybody.
Of course, so I think this is very intelligent to use the word played by ear. So every phase, the longevity of the stage of the phase depends on how will be the virus reacting and how is the response of the population. And I think this is how it goes, because every country there has to be always the phase, and the longevity of it depends on the reaction of the surge of the microbe or of the virus. We have to give a mention, of course, to the role of the NATO. NATO also has headquarters in Belgium, and it's not just a military alliance. So in the new world of today, we have seen that all countries, for example, the United States, the UK, and Belgium, and Egypt, all the countries have turned out to their military to help them in organize the proper organized prophylaxis and organized management of critical situations. So the NATO, as an umbrella for working originally for protection of the whole of Europe, is definitely has a new role in pandemics. What do you think of this role?
NATO has, been created to answer in times of crisis. So I think this one is an unusual one, and not maybe the first one we had in mind when NATO was created.
Yeah.
But NATO has been evolving as the world has been evolving. I mean, we are definitely not in the world in that we found after the Second World War when NATO was created. So I think today NATO has, shown again that it still has an added value in today's world by supporting this coordination, this logistic coordination mechanism, and supporting the efforts of individual member states and member states together. So they have, transport medical personnel and supplies. They have facilitated the construction of hospitals. They have, supported civilian efforts with military medical personnel, for example. So it has been really an important tool to support member states' individual efforts. And of course, it's not because you are in time of pandemic that the rest of the crisis, or the rest of the challenge, let's say, starts to sleep. It's not because you have corona that you don't have other issues. So of course NATO is also there in terms of preparation for this. So it has been, I think, a shown of solidarity in this response to the COVID crisis that NATO has shown that they were able to deliver.
Yeah. And unfortunately, some pessimistic people, including even, for example, Anthony Fauci, the director of the viral studies or infection studies in the United States, sometimes remain pessimistic about how far the corona is going to stay in our countries and how far the virus will stay active. So, seeing the long pessimistic idea of having a year or two extra year, I think the role of the military will be intensified every other day that this crisis stay, because the high need organization of spreading, for example, military hospitals and transports, as you have said, and logistics, I think this remains a very important tool of organization of services, right?
Yes, you're right, but I think today there is much more than we don't know than things that we know. So I think the future remains, unpredictable. I think it always has been, but we forgot about it. So I think this virus is a very good reminder of the fact that the world is not completely predictable.
Yes.
And to come back to NATO, definitely, I think it's also preparing in terms of resilience for the future. And the discussion that have been going among defense ministers have also looked at the long-term effect of the COVID and looked at how we can better plan in terms of pandemics, how we can protect critical industries, how we can improve business continuity planning in different circumstances. So these are in terms of NATO has also looked at the matter in terms of resilience, and I think it's also we have to be prepared for the future. We can never know the future, but we can prepare for it.
I think the vulnerability that the world has found itself in it is definitely very good benefit to convince ourselves that we are not that invincible. And,
exactly.
and if we know this statement for sure and we keep it always in mind, we'll always prepare ourselves to be expecting the unexpected, as they usually say in some comic movies. But definitely this will help us to be prepared for more pandemics to come, should they, I hope, God prevent, God forbid, that these things will happen again. But I think the world will be more prepared with all these arrangements and restrictions to face such crises with more or less confidence and experience. We have to go to an important point which always attracts my attention to Belgium. The fact that Belgium remains as a heaven of coexistence of two languages. How was that possible? I always ask you this question because it always amazes me. And I know that you are kind enough always every time to answer it, because everybody who understands something or has visited Belgium will see that in spite of the fact that the country is not that big geographically, yet it has two sections of different languages speaking differently, and at the same time the bond between the different language speaking people are all existing as good citizens of the same country and keeping the bond unhindered even with the barrier of the language. How was that possible? Because always this is an amazing experience.
I mean, we are indeed a small and diverse country. Maybe it's more visible. I think all countries are diverse, but maybe it's more visible because we have 3 national languages and also a political system that is also taking these differences into account. So we hear often about us when we have a political crisis, because this is how you deal with it. If you want to ensure peace, you also have to allow these differences to be expressed on a political level, and I think this is one of the secrets. It has the price of a complicated structure that is not always often understood very easily by outsiders, but on the other hand, it allows us to use this difference in a creative way and to strengthen them also on the international scene. I think we are often looked at as an example in terms of consensus. We are now, as you know, probably a temporary member of the UN Security Council, and this was our motto for our campaign for the seat, and it's our motto in the way we deal with our seats every day in New York, acting, fostering consensus, acting for peace, because this is what we do internally, and this is also what we do externally. I think we use it, in the European Union level, of course, but also in the multilateral level. We like to build bridges, and this is what we have to do every day internally to build our country and to move it towards the future.
Well, we can't leave this talking about peace and about coexistence by not mentioning that today, or tomorrow, but to be precise, is the great commemoration of 75 years of peace in Europe and the world. I mean, no more world wars, I'm sure, but the 8th of May has seen the surrender of the Axis in Europe to the Allies, and of course this has seen a few months before that was the liberation of Belgium from the tyranny of the occupation, and 75 years of peace in Europe. I think this is a very good time to celebrate that. I know that this year would have been a lot of pomp and circumstances of celebrations, but unfortunately this day is which has always to be remembered in the hearts not only of Europeans but also of the whole world, will pass by us without remembering it. But I think we have to give it some thoughts from you, Excellency Ambassador of Belgium, Sibille de Cartier.
Yes, you are very right, and I think sometimes it's useful to look backwards to be able to realize how much we have walked, and sometimes if you look at the top of the mountain it seems very far, but when you look backwards you say, okay, I've walked already quite
exactly.
And I think at the European Union levels it's the same. I mean, when we looked, you were talking about the dreams of the founder of the European Union, but I mean, in terms of course today's challenge, but it's temporary challenge, and it's based on the treaty, this temporary restriction in terms of the movement of people. But I think maybe it's a good reminder. If you cannot cross easily a border like this, you remember the value of being able for so many years to cross these borders without even thinking that they exist. I mean, as a child, I still have seen these borders and waited, hours there to pass. Today, my children have not seen that yet. Only now, in these very specific circumstances, people experience what they are about. And this is just one example. I mean, in terms of internal market, of course. These borders have been, slowly removed. We are not yet there. Of course, a lot of things can still be done. But, I mean, if you look at all the results that the European Union has achieved in terms of justice cooperation, in terms of, so many. I mean, Schengen is, of course, a beautiful example. The euro as a common monetary experience. I mean, you have so many things that are today taken as granted, by the young generation. I mean, going to study, the Erasmus program is a fantastic program in terms of building experiences, and it's so common today for university students to go to one country or another. It even has now a worldwide agenda. I mean, it has also a worldwide version of this exchange program. So, I mean, there is so many elements of the construction of Europe that, are today taken for granted. And I think, of course, we will continue, we will evolve, but as I said, crises have always been an opportunity for the European Union to improve, and yes. I really believe it will be once more.
Of course. I think we have given a big part of our program to COVID, and we have to turn now to a more optimistic page.
May I just
yes.
add one point on the COVID, because we have talked
Please.
About the reaction of the European Union internally, but we have not talked so much about the reaction of the European Union externally, and
Please.
I think of course it's of interest for Egypt, because of course the first reaction was internally, but the European Union has now put quite a lot of means also to make sure that we have this multilateral response and international cooperation and solidarity that we are all
Please.
In need for, and there has been quite a lot of means put on the table by the European Bank of Investment and the European Commission to support also the more vulnerable countries and neighboring countries in this response. So I think I just wanted to flag it. There is a 20 billion package that has been there on the table, and that would also, include specific support for Egypt, that I thought it was, useful to underline.
Of course, definitely. So please stay with us, Your Excellency, Ambassador Sibille de Cartier, Ambassador of Belgium in Cairo. Stay with us. We'll have a break and come back to beautiful Belgium.
Thank you.
So we're still coming live from Radio Cairo Studio 3 and keeping the social distance. Her Excellency always used to come to our program by herself, but we are respecting the social distance today, and she's with us on air. Excellency Mrs. Sibille de Cartier, Ambassador of Belgium in Cairo, we're back together on air. So we have to give a mention to something that I believe is very dear to all of us. The best thing of Corona is that we are staying together with our families much more time, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So you're having some time to spend with your beautiful family and your kids, and I know that you are a distinguished lady in diplomacy, and definitely you're a distinguished lady as well in the kitchen, right?
Oh, my God. That's maybe too much to say, but I do some little things in the kitchen.
With some assistance, of course.
With some assistance, yes, very much so.
So the good food of Belgium has a very beautiful cuisine, and it has some beautiful recipes. And I believe now your kids are old enough to have their special palate of their own, right? And yes, a special taste of their own. Tell us about the Belgium cuisine until we go there, I hope.
Yes, and I think we will talk about it later. We also give some tips on our Facebook page, in terms of how you can cook some Belgian recipes at home. So don't hesitate to have a look. We will try to publish more in the. So
we'll tell our listeners now. We'll take the opportunity. The Facebook page of the Embassy of Belgium in Cairo is publishing or printing or writing in recipes about special Belgian food, right?
Yeah, we did one with a link with a few recipes from Brussels, and we will do some more. I promise it.
Lovely.
So yes, we are bringing Belgium to you, as you cannot go to Belgium for the moment.
What is the special food of Belgium or special cuisine? Since we are fasting and we are full of watery food, wanting to eat.
So I hope I won't hurt anybody's feeling by talking about food while you cannot yet eat. And Ramadan Kareem to everybody.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. So tell us about the food. Yes.
Yes. Let's say, of course, we are very, very famous for chocolates. Of course, I cannot not mention them. We are also very famous for our fries. You can even find them both in the shops in Cairo, the Belgian fries and the Belgian chocolate. We also, so this is like the very common food. We also very, very famous for beer. Belgium has the most important numbers of beer. Nearly every village has one. So, okay, we don't find so much of these in Egypt. So these are like the very, very traditional products.
And the oysters is also very, very popular dish, right?
Sorry?
Oysters?
Oysters, yes, of course. In season, we have this. We also have special shrimps that you find only in Belgium. They are very small and gray and very tasty. So we have a lot of food around this. Of course, a lot of things seasonal, like asparagus and this type. We have different type of cooking. We have, the family cooking. That is, we have a lot of products based on potatoes, which you will find, and of course we have a sweet tooth. So we love waffles, of course, and we produce hundreds of things with chocolate in different ways. So
yes, so it's a trip that's worthwhile to have examination for yourself, taste for yourself Belgian food in Belgium. Hopefully after the Corona, inshallah. Right?
Yes, exactly. And meanwhile, we have some biscuits, specific biscuit that you can also find in Cairo. So I gave a few tips for the shops.
That's lovely. So since we've talked about the cuisine, we have to talk about the initiative of Belgium, which nowadays started saying that if you can't go to Belgium, Belgium will go to you. Tell us about this beautiful experience, please.
Yeah, we decided to, try to use our social media to give some entertainment for people. So we have a Facebook page. We also have a Twitter account and an Instagram account. So apart, of course, from the information that we are publishing on these media for the Belgians, for example, the last, exceptional flights and all these information that we are publishing for the Belgians, we are publishing some information about Belgium And, some of our museums did nice initiatives to allow you to visit them even you cannot go to them. We have published some of these, some specific exhibition on the Flemish painters, for example, are available. A virtual tour, just as a bit the Ministry of Antiquity did a similar type of initiative here, a beautiful one to allow us to still visit some of Egyptian heritage. We are giving some our followers the possibility to have a better look at Belgium. So you have a taste of it, and when the time allows us, you have maybe the willingness to come and see by yourself.
Of course, and there was also something nice on your Instagram page about a competition. I enrolled in it. I think I won part of it.
Fantastic. The one about the Red Devils? Or?
The historical...
oh, yes, as well.
I like that very much because you were giving examples of emotions and saying how was that date in Egyptian history and things like that. I think this was lovely as well.
Yes, it was an emoji quiz on the recent history of Egypt. It was published by one of our scientists, actually, a researcher on the recent Egyptian history. Mm-hmm. And so we republished it on our page because just as you, I found it really nice. Mm-hmm. Maybe if you allow me, it gives me an opportunity because actually this researcher is part of a team.
Yes, please.
Of the different Belgian institutions that are working together, exploring actually Belgian history in Egypt in the 19th and 20th century.
Yes, I think this deserves to a part of our interview today, because I was just going to bring the subject. A lot of people know that Baron Mban is the founder of Heliopolis, is Belgian, but definitely there are also more Belgians who were involved in the Egyptian-Belgian relations. Could you tell us about this, please?
Yeah, and it's really a rich story, and that's why this project actually was started. I think, very few people know, for example, that this famous Imbaba Bridge is a Belgian construction. Mm-hmm. So this company, Baume & Martin, which is a bit of the same time than the Empire Palace and the Empire story, at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th, has constructed more than 150 bridges all around Cairo. Mm. Not all of them, of course, are still there, but a few of them, and Imbaba is probably the most known one. Mm-hmm. So this is just one example. Of course, we had in the bank sector, people like Rollin, which were very active here. Mm-hmm. We had also Belgians active in the mixed tribunals at that time. So it was a very, very rich, moment in our history. It's not finished, but I would say it was the peak. In terms of how many sectors were involved and also the let's say the material heritage it has left in Egypt from that period.
Of course, one of the greatest heritages that Egyptians really can feel and see by themselves if they go to Heliopolis, which is a very distinguished suburb of Cairo, and now it is part of the greater Cairo, part of really actually downtown Cairo, if we use the expression geographically, which is Heliopolis, built by Baron Mban initiative. And the idea of, I myself belong to Heliopolis, and the family from my maternal side used to own a villa in one of the beautiful streets of Heliopolis, which still exists. This is a very beautiful story of urbanization. And I see that Belgium, I hope, is taking part in the renovation of the church and of the palace, right?
The palace so far. But let's say, this initiative of restoring the palace was an initiative from the Egyptian government.
Yes.
And but we have been, working with the Egyptian government on this history of Heliopolis and since the centenary already. It was in 1905, so 2005. There was a big celebration, if you remember,
yes.
Celebrating the centenary of the city. And at that time, we made a lot of efforts together with the Egyptian government in terms of exploring this past, this common past, exploring, the history of Heliopolis itself. And it has allowed the publication of a book which is remains until today a scientific reference about the history of Heliopolis from the antiquity until today.
Yes, I have a copy of it. I think it's a very distinguished book, actually.
Exactly. Yes. And so it is evolving in the around 2006 2009 we have made a technical study about the palace itself and its situation, like really in terms of technical study. And then of course afterwards everything was paused for a while, and the government took this initiative to go one step further and put a lot of effort in the renovation since 2017. And we are very proud to support this renovation effort. We have a debt swap agreement that was now decided to be used to support this renovation effort. And also we have put some experts at disposal of the government to give the story about the creation of Heliopolis to the Egyptian public. So now, of course, everything is a bit paused, but I hope that we will be very soon able to give the public a glimpse of this story. The exhibition will take place within the renovated Ampin Palace. So it was really a nice cooperation, and that didn't only include the two governments, but also some partners from the civil society. And it was really a beautiful project, and I'm really thankful to Dr. Khaled El-Anani for his leadership in this regard.
Yes, definitely. His Excellency, the Minister, Dr. Khaled El-Anani, is really a man with a vision, and definitely he has got very much involved in the renovation of a lot of beautiful places in Cairo. He's very active in Egypt, and he's very active in always attracting the attention of the whole world to the excavations that are done every day in Egypt. I also had a private talk with Dr. Mustafa Al-Waziri, the Secretary General of the Antiquities, and about the palace itself, and he said, I asked him, is there a chance to bring in the furniture or replicas of the furniture that was in the palace? If we have the photos, why don't we have some replicas of that? What do you think of this idea, Your Excellency? Is it possible to help in doing something like that or whatever?
It needs to be discussed with the experts, but I know that the Ministry of Antiquity has so far is the only one that can do replicas. So any replicas needs the authorization of the ministry.
Yes, of course.
And I know that there has been project in terms of having it more available for the public. It's moving forward. There are discussions ongoing. It's really in the hands of the ministry so far. For example, Belgium, we have had an exhibition about Tutankhamun, and it was broader than Tutankhamun. Recently in Liège, it was still open when this crisis started, it's not the big exhibition that was touring Europe, but it was a smaller version. It included a few of the replica. And I think it shows, how this replica can actually give, some feeling about Egypt to the population in Europe. And I think it's a win-win situation when you use them, because it gives people, I think, the willingness to come and explore it by themselves.
Of course, yes. And I think that also the amount of palaces that remain in the Heliopolis area, or, for example, the palace of the Sultan Hussein and the palace of his wife as well, which are in very close proximity to the Baron Mban palace and the church himself. I think these four structures really are very attracting to the eyes of anyone who's passing by these very much connected structures as regards the vicinity. And I think that Heliopolis, taking care of it and doing this renovation, really will help not only the image of Egypt as in its starting of modernization, but also will help the picture and the appearance of Belgium and the great farsightedness of the Baron himself. Definitely, we have a lot of further plans. When we talk about Egypt and Belgium, definitely there are a lot of water that has passed under the bridge since last time you came. You were kind enough to come in our radio program. Tell us about fields of cooperation between Belgium and Egypt. I know there is this famous cooperation in the field of antiquity, but definitely there are other fields.
Definitely, and if you allow me to react just to your last comment, I think I hope, just like you know, that this example given by the restoration of the Ampin Palace will give, inspiration to the public sector, but also to the private sector for more restoration of the beauties of Heliopolis.
Of course.
But yes, a lot of other cooperation in different sectors. Of course, let's say, I mean, we have had, some cornerstones last year. For example, we have a new partnership with the Port of Antwerp, which is a leading port in Europe, as you know, the second biggest one, and with the Ministry of Petroleum. That's in the framework of energy hub that Egypt is creating for the region. So I think this one is it's just an example, but I like to give it because it's a nice way to show how public-private partnership can be really win-win opportunities, because I think we have leading companies that can transfer know-how and that are ready to do so, and I think it's very important because in terms of future, that's the way forward, I believe. So that's one of the examples. There is many more in terms of economy. We have 1.5 billion, exchange in both sides. Also, the export of Egypt to Belgium has been increasing in the last years. So I think there is a lot of partnership going on based on trust, and I think it's moving forward. That's one of the things I could say. There is many more. Of course, on culture, we have talked about the Ampin Palace, but we have much more, because we also have the archaeologue and many of the usual cooperation that is continuing. We also, through the European Union, of course, a very important partner of Egypt. We tend to forget how much the European Union is there as an actor in support of the education system, in support of water management. There is a very, very big portfolio of cooperation between Egypt and the European Union, and of course Belgium, as member of the European Union, is definitely supporting and encouraging this partnership.
I think
just
Egypt.
A few things.
Yes. I think Egypt is exporting a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, right, to the Belgium part of it.
Yes. Among others, that's one of the main elements of the export. Yes.
Yes, and since we're talking about that, I know that you are an avid reader, and you read a lot of history, and you are also, for your past 4 years tenure here in Egypt, you have had a lot of exposure to Egyptian antiquity. With the famous visits with His Excellency Minister Dr. Khaled Anani, you are always an active member and taking part of examining by yourselves firsthand the excavations. Tell us about this experience, because this is very unique. Not everybody has the experience to see artifacts that have been hidden for hundreds or maybe thousands of years, and you will be one of the very chosen few, representing your country, of course, to examine for yourself these antiquities as they are unearthed. Tell us about this experience, which I believe is, very thrilling, right?
Unbelievably. I mean, I think being an ambassador in Egypt as such is already such a big privilege, and having these opportunities, to go around the country and to visit, all what we have visited was really unbelievable. And I think, the message we were giving by this visit is also that we were going there, and in a time where it was not yet the case of a lot of people. And slowly, I think it has allowed, also supported Egyptians' effort in terms of tourism and giving the result that we have seen in the beginning of the year, of course, which are being challenged now. But I'm sure we will reverse this curve very, very soon. So, I mean, it has been an unbelievable experience, and I really, always said Egypt has a treasure that is not only national, it's really a universal treasure, and it's a universal responsibility to take care of it. I really believe so, and it's definitely, UNESCO's philosophy as well. And it has a part which is very known. I think everybody in the world know about the Great Pyramids of Giza, but a lot of it which is very unknown. I think the Coptic treasures, the Jewish treasures, also the Islamic treasures of Egypt are not that known outside of Egypt. And I'm really thankful for this opportunity, but also I want to give my voice for it, because I think they are really underrated worldwide. And I mean, the efforts that has been done this year was unbelievable, and I think it was also a message to the world in terms of that Egypt is taking its responsibility on one hand, but also, that Egypt is recognizing all the elements of its past. And I think, recognizing, the Jewish and the Coptic heritage is also, a very important symbol in terms of tolerance. And I think Egypt is giving also this message, which is very important.
And I think since we have met also as well in the very famous conference of fraternity between religions that was done in Sinai in St. Catherine late last year, if you remember, in October, November. And I believe that this also was very thrilling experience in seeing for yourself the St. Catherine Monastery, and how we are moving, or we're walking in the footsteps of the Prophet Moses himself, as he was receiving the 10 Testaments. Of course, this was an experience, and climbing the mountain by yourself. I think this was thrilling. To me, it was very thrilling. How was it when you climbed the mountain and saw for yourself this sacred place?
Yes, St. Catherine is a very special place, as you say, sacred, and and I mean, the nature around it is also just amazing. And going to the top of this mountain after this effort and seeing, this amazing scenery is definitely an experience to be recommended.
Yes, of course, I believe so, yes. And the monastery itself is very special, especially the library itself, with all the richness that inside, all these inscriptions and these important priceless documents.
Yeah, it's one of the richest library in the world in terms of its, of the collection. They have very, very precious books. Yes.
And it's a very rare group of icons as well that nobody has found anywhere in the world, because there was the icon destruction that happened. So the only place that have all these icons continuously is in St. Catherine. Excellency, you have talked also about the Jewish heritage restoration that was done under the supervision of Minister Dr. Khalid Anani and the auspice of the President himself, because he thinks that the history of Egypt carries not only one face, it carries the faces of Islam, Judaism and Christianity as well. So you have seen the restoration of different synagogues, and I believe this is a real message of reconciliation with all religions in Egypt.
Yes, definitely. I think as much as the restoration of the heritage is important, I think the message is as important. And yes, embracing this different part of Egypt's history in today's Egypt, I think it's a very important message that Egypt is giving to the world.
And we have to leave the program with some optimistic message. I believe, hopefully, inshallah, that times will get better, and people will, the borders will be opened again, and reciprocal visits between Egyptians to Belgium and Belgium tourists to Egypt will come back soon, right?
Yes, I hope so too. I hope we will go there too. And meanwhile, we are bringing it to each other, and I think it's a beautiful sign also what we can do together.
So we can always tell our listeners, if you can't go to Belgium, Belgium will come back to you. Go to the Facebook page of the Belgium Embassy in Cairo, and if you can't, as a Belgium citizen, since you might find this link on the internet, if you can't see Egypt for time being, you can always visit our museums virtually until you come by yourself physically here in Egypt, right?
Exactly, and I'm really encouraging everybody to do, because it has given some opportunities that we didn't have before in terms of virtual travel.
Of course. Excellency Ambassador Sibille de Cartier, it's a great pleasure and honor, Ambassador of Belgium, to have you with here on your third time hearing in our program. And would you please kindly promise to come back to us again in physical, inshallah, after the relief of the corona crisis, to tell our listeners and to remind our listeners we had hard times, but we went and we came out victoriously.
Thank you very much for hosting me today. It was a pleasure to be with you.
It was a great pleasure to have with us Her Excellency Ambassador Sibille de Cartier, Ambassador of Belgium in Cairo, a seasoned ambassador and an experienced ambassador. Really, it was a great honor. This was World of Info. My name is Dr. Amr Mabrouk. Dua Muhammad was at the control. And see you next week, same time, same station, Radio Cairo.